Hey guys, my name's Tristan. I guess I'm gonna start this off by kind of first saying that I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos where YouTubers are doing like Storytime videos where they are either telling stories about their own personal experiences or reading fun, interesting stories from like Reddit or like their followers and stuff, and I kind of really liked the idea, so I kind of wanted to give it a shot. I was kind of thinking of starting a series where I kind of read just like spooky stories from Reddit that is either like interesting or that you guys would want, anything like that. I was gonna do like videos, but I wanna try to see how going about it this way kind of works. Maybe pairing this with a video or something. But yeah, so without further ado, I am reading from the tag called No Sleep on Reddit. This one is by a user named Ali Kinsky Walker 7. It's entitled, I Woke Up to My Fiancé Standing Over Me. Honey, I whispered, watching my fiancé James standing over me with his eyes closed. I had been fast asleep, my REM cycle in full force when his presence woke me up. I've always been a light sleeper, which came in handy for James, who has been sleepwalking ever since he was a child. 9 times out of 10, his sleepwalking woke me up, and I'd gently guide him back to bed. However, James had never done this before. Usually I'd find him in our bathroom or just outside our bedroom door, dragging his feet achingly slow as he inched forward, propelled by slumber. He never stood over me like this before, and it creeped me out, enough for me to actually try and wake him up. When we first moved in together, James's mother made it very clear not to wake him if I ever found him sleepwalking. She stressed that if I did wake him up, it would cause him to be extremely disoriented and possibly violent. I had heeded her advice most of the time, but I've had to wake him up once or twice when I'd find him teetering at the top of our stairs. He'd always just give me a sleepy smile and head back to bed. His creepy stance aside, I didn't see how this time would be any different if I woke him up. I stepped out of bed and watched him for a moment. He stood limply, his head hanging slightly as he faced the spot where I had been sleeping. I immediately decided I was going to put bells on the floor by my side of the bed tomorrow. I normally didn't mind his episodes, but there was something unnerving about waking up to see him standing over me. I placed my hand on his shoulder, intending to give him a gentle shake to wake him up. But the moment my skin met his head snapped up to face me so fast I yelped. I stumbled back and watched him. His eyes slowly peeled open, his glassy, vacant stare penetrating me. "James, baby," I whispered. At this point, I wasn't sure if he was awake or not. His eyes had never opened before when he sleepwalked, but his emotionless stare was definitely not a look I was used to when he was awake. Sure enough, his head slumped forward a bit again, his eyes still staring my way, but more at my chest now than my face. I snorted. Even asleep, he was a dog. That little bit of amusement relieved some of my apprehension, and I scolded myself for being so creeped out. This was my sweet fiancé, and I dealt with him sleepwalking many times. I took a step towards him again to wake him. When he smiled, fear gripped my body again. I'd had enough. "James!" I screamed. James' head snapped up once again, but this time I knew he was awake. "Shit, sorry, Amy. Sleepwalking again?" I simply nodded my head as we both crawled back into bed. No point in telling him how thoroughly he had creeped me out and hurting his feelings. He threw his arm over me and drifted back to sleep. I stayed awake. The next morning, despite wanting to not give James too many details about the previous night to save his feelings, I decided to question him about his activities that led up to him falling asleep. For sleepwalkers, or at least for James, any significant change in his routine almost always caused an episode. I couldn't get that malevolent smile out of my head, and I wanted to make sure this wasn't going to happen again. He assured me that no, he hadn't eaten anything weird the night before, and of course he hadn't watched any scary movies. When he asked why I was questioning him the way I was, I said I merely wondered what his evening consisted of while I was at work. That night, as we got ready for bed, I felt more at ease. I had that evening off and was able to make sure he followed his normal routine leading up to bed, so that nothing out of the ordinary would happen. I did lay out bubble wrap on the floor next to my side of the bed as an extra precaution, since I couldn't find any bells. James stared at it with pursed lips before he got in bed, but didn't say anything. Neither did I. We fell asleep, James' arm draped over me, and everything seemed fine. Of course, I wasn't that lucky. I was woken up from my slumber by a dull thudding noise. I groggily looked around the room. James wasn't in bed, but he also wasn't anywhere in the room. I sighed. Top of the stairs again, then. It didn't bother me too much, though. At least he wasn't hovering over me. I got out of bed, the popping of the bubble wrap under my feet giving me a small heart attack for a moment before I realized what it was. I tiptoed over to our bedroom door and flipped the light switch that illuminated the landing and the top of the stairs. James wasn't there. The thudding became louder, and I realized it was coming from downstairs. I immediately felt uneasy. James would never have made it down the stairs while asleep. In fact, he's fallen down them twice. The stairs were a point of contention between us. Me pleading with him about us needing a one-story, him arguing that he was fine, that it happened so rarely and we couldn't afford to move. "James?" I called out. He didn't answer, and the thudding persisted. I cautiously made my way down the stairs and followed the noise. James was standing at the front door, gently hitting his head against the wood. I inched closer to him, trying to not let my fear outweigh my instinct to help him back into bed. I reached for the light switch near him, and when I flicked it on, I nearly screamed. He had that same wide, creepy grin on his face. I knew I needed to stop him from hitting his head on the door, but the smile on his face while he did the action completely unnerved me. I screamed his name to wake him up like before, but this time he didn't wake up. I took a deep breath, deciding I was being ridiculous. I needed to help my fiancé. There was nothing to fear. It was just James. I closed the final few steps between us and gently grabbed his head, pulling it away from the door. His body apparently didn't register what had happened because his head kept swinging forward as if he was still in front of the door. "James, please wake up," I said loudly. His mouth opened, hanging agape for a moment. I thought he was in the middle of waking up. Maybe he was going to apologize like last night, and we could head back to bed. But his eyes never opened. Instead, he began whispering something furiously under his breath. He had replaced the repetition of hitting his head with this word. He was whispering over and over. I leaned in as close as I dared and focused on what he was saying. "Amy, Amy, 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 Amy." He wouldn't stop, just kept repeating my name like it was acid in his mouth. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I left him there, running up the stairs and locking our bedroom door behind me. I heard my name getting louder, and I wasn't sure if it was because he was coming after me or if he was just raising his voice. I hoped to God it was the latter. I pulled out my cell phone and dialed James's mom, who picked up on the second ring. I was able to explain everything that was happening through my sobs. James's mother listened intently and was silent for a long while when I was done. "Amy, I have to ask you something. And please, do not lie. It's important that you tell the truth." I nodded, not thinking about the fact that she couldn't see the action. James's sick chant of my name had ceased, but it didn't make me feel any better. "Have you woken James up during one of his sleepwalking episodes?" I gulped, not wanting to admit that I ignored her advice. It really couldn't be that bad, could it? "I have, but only when it was completely necessary. As in, if I didn't, he was going to fall down the stairs and break his neck." James's mother's reply came immediately. "You need to leave the house." A dull thudding began on the outside of my bedroom door. "What? Why? I can't leave James like this. He's going to hurt himself. I just need to know what to do." "I told you not to wake him, Amy," was all she said, and then the line went dead. The thudding on the bedroom door suddenly turned into banging. I frantically ran to the door and began shouting at James to stop, that he was going to hurt himself. In response to my screaming, The banging stopped. "Amy?" James's sweet voice called from the other side of the door. The doorknob jiggled. "Why am I locked out, Ames?" I sighed as the tension left my body and opened the bedroom door. James stood on the other side, his body relaxed. I could have cried with relief, that is, until he took one step forward out of the shadows and into the moonlight streaming in through the window. Everything about him indicated that he was awake, until I looked up at his eyes. They were wide open, but were rapidly looking every which way, never focusing on me as they rolled around in his head. He was in REM cycle. He was still asleep. "Amy," he said, as that smile creeped across his face and he reached for me. I screamed and shoved him out of the way, running down the stairs and out of my house. I tried calling James's mother multiple times as I drove to the nearest hotel in our town. I can't get through. It doesn't even ring. It appears she blocked my number. I love my fiancé. I don't want anything bad to happen to him. I've done my best through the years to keep him from getting hurt as he walked without any conscious thought. Now I may be the one who has to hurt him, because it's still nighttime and a dull thumping noise has started on the other side of my hotel room. Well, that's the end of that one. So I guess let me know what you think. And if maybe you want me to continue, or if you have any ideas of any stories or your own personal stories that you'd like me to read, just let me know. Thanks for listening. See you next time.